And here we can start. Okay, so I modeled my book after Napoleon Hill's book, the famous book Think and Grow Rich. I just added in Think and Grow Rich like a Jew. And as you can see, I have like the bracket pointing to think like a Jew, right? So the idea is I want to teach the Jewish mindset. We have a lot of lessons, 3,000 years of accumulative knowledge on wealth, even more if we go back even to Tanakh times. And I want to bring some of the lessons and show the Jewish mindset for growing wealth. I think the Jewish people as a nation have demonstrated quite a high degree of success in that particular area over the years. All right, so let's see. There we go. So what we'll cover today, Mahshava Dibur Maaseh framework. I don't know if you've heard this, but it's like a triad. Mahshava is thought, dibur, speech, maaseh, action, right? When you say think and grow rich, right? So think is like just focusing on the mindset, on the mahshava. If you have the right mindset, then you can get anything done, really. But the Jewish framework is machshava and dibur, speech. You have to acquire the right language, the right terminology, and maaseh. How do you translate that into action? And this is a framework for personal growth. It's a framework for any kind of character transformation. And it's the framework of my book. My book is 3 sections. The first section, machshava, right? And also, it's also the framework of this presentation. We're going to go from machshava to speech, to dibur, to maaseh, to action. The first stage of machshava, of thought, is shattering limiting beliefs. Before we can acquire the right mindset, we need to first understand what kind of beliefs do we have that are preventing us and stopping us from reaching our potential, and are they true? Do they need to be shattered? Do they need to be reframed? And then we can acquire the abundance mindset, right? That allows us to bring this, what we call in Hebrew, Shefa, this overflow of blessing, of beracha, coming from God, coming from the heavens, and bring it into our lives. And then, who is wealthy? What is wealth? And how do you grow your wealth? Okay, so let's start with an excerpt from the book explaining what exactly is Mahshava Dibur Maaseh. I know usually you're accustomed to me reading out sections, text in Hebrew. Today I'm going to read out some English text, if that's okay with you. Okay, so in Jewish thought, the journey to achieving a goal mirrors the divine act of creation. The Torah begins with God's vision, a thought, which says, Hashem Kanani Reshit Darko. The Torah existed before he created the world, meaning he had this plan in his mind, right? Followed by his words, which shaped reality. And God said, let there be light. And then there was light. Finally, action completed the process of creation. He created the light, right? With every stage of creation, God said, he gave a command, he spoke it, and then he says, Vayas or Vayivra, right? And then he did and he created, right? So this divine model, Machshava Diburu Ma'aseh, right? Thought, speech, and action offers a framework for manifesting intentions and transforming them into reality. Us, we, mere humans, people, right? We're created b'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. We possess the unique ability to follow this progression in our own lives, whether building wealth, cultivating relationships, or pursuing personal growth. Our thoughts, words, and actions shape not only the world around us, but also our inner character. And this is extremely, extremely important. It's the actions that we do. If you, those of you who were in my previous course on the 8 chapters of Maimonides, basically the structure of the nefesh, the actions that we do create habits. Those habits form our character, and our character dictates basically our mode of thinking, our thoughts. And it works the other way around. Our thoughts build our character. That character also causes us to behave in certain ways. Maimonides taught that the nefesh, right, our soul, is a unified entity. So what does that mean? It has many different functions, the nefesh. Part of the nefesh functions, if you remember, deal with man's metabolism. Some of it deal with man's desires. Parts of the functions of the nefesh deal with man's intellect and man's actions. So what does it mean that it's a unified entity? It means it has different functions. If a part of the nefesh gets sick, it can affect the entire nefesh. If a person's ruins his metabolism by bad eating habits, that can ruin also his thought patterns, because it's all part of a unified nefesh. If a person, on the other hand, if a person perfects his nefesh, right, by doing actions that will cause him to perfect his character, that also can bring health to his entire nefesh as a whole. So Maimonides taught that the nefesh, our soul, is a unified entity. Thought and action aren't separate. They influence one another. Repeated positive actions can reshape our mindset, just as a clear vision can guide our behavior. All right? And this is reinforced also in modern science. Modern neuroscience affirms this. Focused thought activates neural pathways. Speaking those thoughts aloud strengthens them. So if you have a vision, you have certain values, and you speak them, you speak your vision to people around you, you share it with people, it strengthens those pathways in your mind or in your brain. And consistent action rewires the brain to align behavior with intention. If you adopt a certain action, for instance, and this I'm going to take this example and I'm going to repeat this example throughout this entire lecture, right? For instance, giving tzedakah, right? You give tzedakah over and over again. This builds a character, this trait of generosity. This trait of generosity changes you to a mindset of Shefa, of abundance, and this brings abundance into your life. The path to change, real, lasting change, begins with what you think, what you say, and what you do. This is the structure of the book and also of this lecture, and it can become the structure of your life to any kind of transformation you want to do, right? Adopt this triad, machshava, thought, dibur, your speech, and ma'aseh, right, your actions. What actions can you do to acquire the character that you need in order to think and behave in a certain way? Okay? So we're going to go now to the first part, the machshava, the thought. And the first, most important, is shattering limiting beliefs. Okay? There's a beautiful midrash. Sorry. There's a beautiful midrash regarding Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu is the son of Terach. Terach had the most prominent business in Ur Kasdim. He had a shop selling idols. And Avraham, through his we'll call it his intellectual investigation, he came to the realization that these idols are falsehoods. And he went and he destroyed all the idols. He shattered all the idols in the workshop, basically rejecting his father's business, rejecting all these preconceived notions that the idol workshop was building and selling. So what could these preconceived notions be? Well, yeah, one is money is the root of all evil. This is repeated over and over again. People think that money or wealth can bring greed, and these are limiting beliefs, because if you truly believe that, you're not going to do anything to acquire wealth. You have this dissonance. It's a cognitive dissonance in your mind. Well, on the one hand, you do want to acquire wealth. Who doesn't want to be able to live a luxurious lifestyle? On the other hand, if you really believe that wealth is the root of evil and acquiring wealth is greedy, then you're kind of like, you say in Hebrew, "Samnat smoraglaim," right? It's like you're sticking your foot out the trip. You're going to become your own obstacle in that journey to acquiring wealth. Another one, time equals money. Time equals money. If you truly believe that, this is maybe one of the most famous. To me, it's a horrific equation. Time equals money. Then you're just going to keep selling your time for money. But when you understand, or when you have an abundance mindset, a mindset where money is an infinite source, it comes from an infinite source. It could always be replenished, as opposed to time, which the day you're born, your time bank, your balance goes down and down. It's the most limited resource there is. And if you exchange time for money, or you believe that time is equivalent to money, you're trading your most limited and precious resource for a resource that can always be replenished. All right, career security. Study well, get a good degree, and get a good job, right? There is no career security in the modern day. So we need to really evaluate these ideas that we grew up thinking. We need to see, is it true? Is it true? Fine, keep it. Is it wrong? Is it false? What kind of behaviors is this causing me, and what kind of obstacle is this false concept instilled in me? And you need to shatter it and get rid of it. One of the big obstacles that we have regarding limited beliefs is that there are actually some statements of Hazal, of religious figures, of the Hachamim, that sometimes seem to suggest a limiting belief. For instance, lehistapek b'mu'at. Lehistapek b'mu'at is usually translated as settling for less, right? As if the Chachamim are coming to promote some sort of virtue in being stringent on yourself and settling for less. But if you analyze the language of the Hachamim, that's not what lehistapek b'mu'at really means. The word lehistapek, which people translate as settling, this doesn't mean to settle. It means to satisfy your needs, right? Sipek tzorchenu b'midbar ba'im shana. We say in the Haggadah that God provided for us for 40 years. Lehistapek means to provide for yourself. All right? So what does that mean, lehistapek b'mu'at? The mu'at doesn't mean small or little. It means the lesser, as opposed to the merubeh, the majority. The mu'at is the minority, the lesser. So lehistapek b'mu'at of what? It means satisfying your needs from the lesser portion of your income. you have a certain income. Let's say I'm rounding up 10,000 shekels a month, right? That means what the Hachamim are telling you is try as much as you can to satisfy your living expenses from the lesser part, less than half. If you can afford, if you can manage to live off less than half of your income, satisfy your needs from less than half of your income. So 4,900 shekels a month, right? In talking about a case of 10,000 shekel a month income, right? 10% goes to tzedakah, and the rest savings and investments. The Hachamim are telling you, listapek b'muat doesn't mean settle for less. This is a formula for growing your wealth. No matter how much you make, you should have at least, most of your income going to tzedakah and savings and investments, and the lesser part to satisfy your needs. All right? We're going to come back to this, nistapek b'muat, later. I'm going to show you how even this can grow over time. All right? Just a little, what's it called? Glimpse into the future, right? If you have savings and investments, and those savings and investments themselves yield you some passive income, right? This comes into your total income. Your total income grows, and the living expenses part, the mu'at part of your income, also grows, meaning you can now buy more things. Okay? But we'll get back to that later. So once we remove our limiting beliefs, right? Oh, and I want to go back to Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu, who rejected his father's workshop, he didn't become poor. He became one of the wealthiest people in the ancient Middle East, to the point where kings referred to him, Nisi Elohim ata betochenu, says, you are a prince of God among us, all the other kings in Canaan, right? We're all rich and wealthy. He says, Nisi Elohim, prince of God, both exemplifying Avraham Avinu's spiritual perfection and also wealth, his wealth. Nisi Elohim, you're prince of God among us. So, what is Shefa? What is this abundance mindset? And this is, I want to say this is one of the hidushim that I bring in my book, because there are tons and tons of books in this genre of personal finance and self-improvement, and they all assume an abundance mindset. However, I haven't seen any of them actually defining what an abundance mindset is and how it works. So, this is a main chapter in my book, and this is, I think, a nice hidush that I bring. So what is Shefa? Shefa is the divine flow of vitality, wisdom, and existence that sustains all creation. God created the world, right? He emits some sort of, we'll call it life energy, creative energy, right? Shefa literally means an overflow, meaning he's always broadcasting this creative force, all right? Unlike human resources, which are finite and often transactional, Shefa is not a commodity. It's not something that you can go and mine and it'll run out eventually. It is a continually renewing resource, flowing in proportion to one's capacity to receive it. Meaning it's always flowing. Really, the only thing limiting Shefa in our lives is our capacity to receive. And by the way, not everybody has the capacity to receive. And we'll see exactly how it works, the mechanics of the abundance Shefa mindset. All right, so the word Shefa actually means overflow. And if you go back to one of our previous courses, we discussed this in length over 2 or 3 classes in the course of the fundamentals of the Torah, right? The way God flows is under the mitzvah of loving God and knowledge of God. How knowledge comes, as it's really all His creative force comes. It comes through this mechanism. Shefa begins with God and first fills the highest spiritual beings, the angels. We saw there in the course that it goes through the Hayot HaKodesh into the Seraphim and the Ofanim, all the way down to the Ishim, right? Right? Once the first level is filled, the Shefa, the overflow of God's blessing, we'll call it His Beracha, overflows downward to the next level of being, right? From the Hayot to the Ofanim, all the way down, and then to the next, until it ultimately reaches the human soul. It goes to the Ishim, and the Ishim overflow this abundance onward onto humanity. All right? Now, this flow is infinite, and it's always flowing. This creative force, where God said, let there be light, this enlightenment, this beracha, that God is flowing out, projecting out into the world, says He does this constantly. He didn't do it once. And we say in the Shema, the berachot before the Shema, and our morning prayers, every single day we say, Hamhadesh betuvo bechol yom tamid maaseh bereshit, that God renews in His goodness, right, every single day, constantly, bechol yom, constantly, tamid maaseh bereshit, the act of creation of Genesis. This creative energy that God puts into the world, He puts it out every day, renews it, it's constant. And we say, Le'olam Adonai, Devarcha nisav b'shamayim. Forever, God, your word, what is your word? Yehi or, right? Let there be light. This word of creation, nisav b'shamayim, it is constant, it is stable in the heavens. Right? So the Shefa coming from God, He didn't create the world once upon a time. He puts out this creative energy all the time. It's constant, it's never ceasing, and it's infinite. The only thing limiting this flow or our us receiving this energy is us ourselves. It's our capacity to receive this energy. And Daniel, he has this very interesting statement, very perplexing. He says, Yehav chochmeta lehakimin, right? He says, God, this is in Aramaic, he says, God gives His wisdom to the wise. And we'd say, well, why is He giving wisdom to the wise? The wise are wise. They have wisdom. It's the ignorance, it's the fools that need wisdom. Right? You should be Yehav Hachmeta Latipshaya to the morons. It says, no, it says Yehav Hachmeta Hakimin. He bestows His wisdom to the wise. And in the Torah, when God is instructing us to build a Mishkan, He kind of answers that question. He says, Uvlev kol hacham lev natati chokhmah. Says, I give wisdom in the hearts of the wise-hearted. Right? So what is the hacham who receives this wisdom? Is someone who's wise-hearted. That's where wisdom comes to. And Maimonides explains to us what this hacham or hacham lev is. All right? Says, therefore, the early sages instructed that a person should always evaluate their traits, right? We actually brought this halakha of the Rambam of Maimonides in 2 courses, one on the Shemona Perakim and another one on the fundamentals of the Torah, right? He says a person needs to work on his character, on his traits. It says every characteristic has 2 opposing, we'll call it limits. All right, A person can be greedy and a person can be generous. He can be exceedingly generous. He could be exceedingly greedy. He says both are bad traits. He says you need to teach yourself to be moderately generous, right? A person can always be angry and a person can be completely indifferent. It says both anger and indifference are bad traits. You have to teach yourself to have empathy, to be in the middle. All right. It says align. So a person, sages instructed that a person should always evaluate their traits, align them with the middle path so that they be perfected. And this path is called the path of the wise. Anyone whose traits are balanced and moderate is referred to as a Hacham. So what is the Hacham Lev? The Hacham Lev is someone who works on his personality, who balances his traits. He fixes himself and perfects himself according to the middle path, right? And then as we see, Uvlev, and so the heart of this person, this Hacham Lev, this person who worked on himself, Natati Chokmah. To him I can give my wisdom, my abundance, my beracha. All right, this is how abundance works. So the only thing preventing us is ourselves. And over here, I made an illustration. Basically, this Shefa that's coming from the heavens. You could think of it like a radio broadcast, right? And you need to fine tune yourself to the right station. You do that by fine tuning your characteristics by your behavior. As you behave in the right way, for instance, to give tzedakah again and again, you're now fine tuning yourself for generosity, right? And this is one of the stations that God is broadcasting on. You are now opening yourself to receive this abundance that's coming from the heavens, from God. Okay? Now, God is overflowing. He's always overflowing. And he flows into one stage and that into the Hayot, and they overflow into the Ophanim and into the Seraphim till it comes to man, right? And man is like a vessel that can contain that. However, even that vessel, that man is, as limited as he is, there is a way to have infinite beracha flow through. It's called being tzinorot hashefa in the words of the Kabbalists, all right, and a conduit for shefa in Hebrew. So imagine shefa as a river and yourself as both a vessel and a pipeline, or as a river channel, leading the waters to farther reaches inland, allowing for more communities to thrive. As a vessel, you receive divine blessings. A vessel, though, is limited, can only hold a limited amount. But when you become a pipeline, you magnify those blessings, allow them to nourish countless others while continually replenishing yourself. This is the essence of being a conduit for Shefa, right? So I brought an illustration here. Have you ever seen those Kiddush sets where you can pour the wine on the top and it passes it on to all the members of the house and divides it into all these other different little Kiddush cups? It says, so you can accept Shefa from above. However, instead of being a glass, think of yourself as also more like a teapot, where you can pour that Shefa out and let others enjoy that Shefa. And the Shefa could be of wisdom, it could be of wealth, it could be of anything. If you learn something and you now become a mentor for someone else and start teaching them, right, you are becoming a conduit of Shefa. You are receiving this blessing from God and you are passing it on to others. And by so doing, you're getting more and more of this Shefa, of this blessing coming through you and passing it on to others. All right? So this is the basics of the Shefa mindset. And this is the first section of mahshava, of thought. And now we will move on to the next section of dibur. Does anyone have any questions yet before we move on?
What
Okay,
was the
so
name
let's,
again? Sami, could you repeat
sorry,
it for
the
me,
name of
please? The Shefa, what was it?
Sinorot Shefa, the conduit for Shefa.
Yes, right.
Oh, by
Thank
the way, it's
you.
all written down in my book. If you feel free to read it, I'll share it with Bracha later.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
All right, so the next
I have
section
a
is
question. Sorry,
yes, please.
I have a question too. Have like what about like the how do you say that? Like the sharing of wealth? Like when we talk about like gaining wealth for ourselves, because you said there is always an overflow, so there is always enough. But the question is still how we share it, because some have more, some have less, and right? Like the
Right,
question
so we
of
go
justice.
to for instance, giving tzedakah, but it doesn't have to be actual money always. You could be just generous with inviting people and hosting people in your house and cooking a meal for your neighbors and your friends.
I
That's
mean like the
also a
bigger,
form of sharing the wealth.
yeah. I mean like more the bigger picture of like society. Like
Yeah, okay, so it's something called, I get into this later on in the book, not so much in this class. It's called like trickle-down economics, where
mhm,
as you create value and gain wealth, so you create jobs for others, right?
mhm,
Or maybe you donate a wing to you accumulate a lot of wealth and you donate a wing to the university, to a hospital,
mm,
to this is
yeah.
how becoming a conduit of Shefa works.
Okay. So you also
Is
write
you
about
get
the
blessing, you don't
responsibility.
hoard it. You share it with others.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So now we move on
Sami,
to
I have
yeah.
one other question, please. There are different covenants. So which of the blessing is by the covenant what you were talking about with the wine?
No, I was just an illustration of dividing it between others.
Okay.
Because I mean with the covenant, I mean you have the Abrahamic covenant, you have different covenants.
Yeah, that's unrelated to covenants.
Sorry?
This is unrelated to any
Oh,
specific
unrelated.
covenant.
Okay.
Sammy, can I also
It's
ask
a
a
different
question?
topic. Yes, please.
So you spoke about like the vision, the thoughts. How can I make sure, or in your concept, is there something like a hubris or like something that like something where I'm imagining myself too much of myself, where I'm overestimating myself? Like I know this sounds like a limiting belief, but
Well, we didn't really get into defining your vision and how you do that. I deal with that more in the book.
okay.
But I would say focus on like your next step, and we'll see how we can leverage
Mm,
ourselves later on in the lecture, towards the end of the lecture.
okay, interesting. Thank you.
All right, so let's move on. So now we move on from mahshava, thought, to speech, to dibur. All right, and Maimonides, he writes in the Guide for the Perplexed, he says, know that the key to understanding everything the prophets said and grasping their truth is understanding their metaphors and the meaning of their terminology. All right, it says the key to understanding the books of the prophets, first of all, is understanding their language. Okay, every single discipline has its terminology, has its jargon, its lingo. And if you want to be able to navigate yourself in that world, you need to understand the meaning of the words that they use. All right, so the guide for the perplexed is meant to guide the student in decoding the metaphors of the prophets and of the Hachamim. So he dedicates the entire first section of his book to understanding, it's like a dictionary, understanding the meaning of the words in Hebrew and how they are used in prophecies. And what do they mean in prophecies? To say, same way, if you want to understand the words, the language of prophets, you need to understand their terminology. If you want to understand profits and wealth, you also need to learn the terminology of the financial world. All right? And I think you can also understand this in your own personal life. I'm bringing here an example of Ivanka Trump, right? Donald Trump's daughter, right? She didn't grow up Jewish. She converted to Judaism. And she's talking here about this new concept that she learned and that's guiding her life. I'm going to play this video. I want to play this video for you. Let's see. Is it opening? It's a short video.
Accepted Judaism called Lashon Hara, which is translated into, I think, quite literally evil speech. And the idea that, speaking poorly of another is almost the moral equivalent to murder, because you can't really repair it. You can apologize, but you can't repair it. Another component of that is that it does as much damage to the person saying the words than it does to the person receiving them. And I think about that a lot. I talk about this concept with my kids a lot. And I'm not willing to pay the price of that fleeting and momentary satisfaction of sort of swinging back, because I think it would be too expensive for my soul, and that's how I kind of made peace with it.
So did everyone hear it well and smooth?
Yes.
This is actually very, very profound, what she's saying. That there's a few lessons just from this less than a minute of her talking. All right? She didn't grow up with this concept of Lashon Hara. All right? But as she learned it, right, it came into her lexicon, right, this term, Lashon Hara. She now knows how she can be aware of it, and more importantly, she can, she's beware, she's afraid, she doesn't want to speak Lashon Hara, and she understands the price it takes on your soul when you speak Lashon Hara, and more importantly, she brings this concept into her daily life when she's talking with her kids and her family, right? So too, I mean, I'm sure you too, who have come to study in Pnei Or, there's these new concepts that you learn, and when you incorporate them into your language, you start thinking differently, you start behaving differently, right? Anybody have any concept that they learned that they're now incorporating into their lingo that they'd like to share?
I like the Gamzu Letova.
Sorry, which one?
Gamzu Letova.
Gamzu Letova. Right, that's also a very profound one. Things happen around you, you understand that there's some sort of guiding hand behind it, and ultimately it's supposed to work out for better. How has that changed your life?
Especially with families' health, very difficult times, losing a son and having 3 other family members very ill at the present time. And since I've gotten here to Israel, it's been very difficult.
Wow.
So it's been a very powerful everyday kind of added to the Shacharit and other.
Incorporating this into your mentality gives you the strength to deal with some of the biggest hardships a person can go through in their life. All right, so this these are concepts that you learn, that you introduce into your language, and now put you in a different place than you were before. So too, if you want to start navigating the financial world, you need to learn even the basic concepts. It's one of the most important things to get your footing in this world of wealth, right? And as Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, writes, he says, and the good news is words are free. Doesn't even cost anything. You just need to learn the terms. All right. So basic terms, assets, liabilities, standard of living, and quality of life. By the way, we're not going to define them here. They're all well defined in the book, in my book, right? But this is a big one, standard of living and quality of life. These are terms that people misunderstand, confuse, and by so doing, by confusing them, they live a very frustrating life financially. I have a chapter in the book where it's just the second section of my book is people talking. It's dialogue between people using these terms, sometimes misusing the terms, and then correcting each other so that they learn to use the terms in their regular conversations properly, and just that can set them on a different trajectory in their financial journey. All right? Income, expensive, passive income, savings. There's one term that we will go into here. It's called right here, interest or compound interest. All right, and how it works. What is compound interest? Referred to by some as the eighth, as a Pele world wonder. The eighth world wonder is compound interest. I think it was Einstein who said it's the eighth world wonder. It's you have, let's say, you put 10,000 shekels into savings. Again, I'm using just round numbers, right? Into a savings account, into an investment, right? And this investment can get you, let's say, a 10% yield. It's a bit of a high yield, but let's say it gets you 10% yield over a year, right? So at the end of the year, you now have 10,000 plus the interest that you gained, so 1,000. So that's total of 11,000 shekels. All right. Now you go into the next year. You're not starting with that same 10,000. You now have 11,000. Right. So you see the blue part of the chart is your principal. It's the amount that you put in every year. And your growth, the interest, is the orange part. So you see 2025, you put in 10,000, you grow 1,000, you have 11,000. The next year, 2026, the blue part starts at 11,000, and that grows 10%. So now it grows 1,100, 1,100. And the next year, 2027, now starts with everything you had in the previous year, and it starts growing exponentially. So at the end of 15 years, if you just put in one time 10,000 shekels at the beginning, at the end of 15 years, that'll grow to close to 45,000 shekels without you doing anything. All right? This is one of the fundamental principles to growing wealth. What happens, though, if you add even a small amount to this initial 10,000 shekel saving policy? Let's say every month you add 100 shekels. All right, if you can allow yourself 100 shekels a month, you 10,000 shekels at the beginning. Every month you add an extra 100 shekels. With the same compounded interest concept, at the end of the 15 years, it more than doubles what we did previously. You get 85,000 shekels. All right? This is the power of compounded interest. Once you understand it and you start using terms like interest and compound interest in your daily lives, right? You start thinking in these terms, you start behaving in accordance with these terms, by putting some money aside to grow your savings, to grow your assets, right? Then you can start accumulating wealth. And it doesn't even have to start from so much. Now we're going to tie this back to the stapeg b'mu'at, right? You could grow this, you could not touch it, right? And grow it over time. But let's say you accumulated enough that you could already be more comfortable with your income, with the amount of savings you have on the side. You say we're going to divide our income, right, into living expenses, which is a little bit less than half. 10% are going to tzedakah, and 41%, the rest, going into our investments. Now, this investment now yields us income. It adds income, right? We saw it gave an extra 1,000 shekels, right? That extra 1,000 shekel now comes into our income. And now this enlarges our total income. So now the minority part, the 49% of our living expenses grows. And now our living expenses can grow. That means if up until now we can only afford driving a really old crappy car, now we can afford a slightly better car, right? But this grows over time. So as your income grows from your investments, so on the one hand, the amount of charity you give can grow, right? So that's a very big benefit to the world of you accumulating wealth, is that now the proportion that you give of your income to tzedakah is the same, but the amount that you give grows. The amount of your investments grow, and your standard of living, what you can afford for yourself and for your family, can also grow proportionally. Now, as people get extremely rich, for instance, multimillionaires and billionaires, the living expense section of their income is actually really, really small, because they don't need so much of their income to go to their personal expenses. So they give a lot more tzedakah, and they put a lot more into their investments in order to support everyone else around them. All right? Was this understood?
I have a question.
Yes.
Like how many percent of tax we need to pay to the government? So what's
Sorry?
how much the percent, how many percent our income we pay for the tax for the government, the income, right?
Oh, well, that depends where you're living in the tax policy. I'm
Yeah,
talking about your net after paying your tax. Right?
After paying the tax, okay, to that.
Yeah, after paying the tax, you can, what you get, what's left over for you, this is how you can divide it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So it's very important to learn the terms, to be able to incorporate it in your language, in your speech, when you're talking to your family, to your friends, to your kids, both on the machshava level, right, of your vision and your values and your mindset, and also on the dibur level of the actual meaning of the terms, and using the financial language properly in order to grow your wealth. But if all you're doing is talking and thinking, not much is going to happen. The third part of this triangle, this triad, is action. How do we bring this into action? So, let's see. There's a question that the Hachamim ask. Let's see. You could probably already answer this question. What's better? You're going to give, you have $1,000 to give, right, to tzedakah. What's better? to give a grant of $1,000 or to give 10 different grants of $100 each?
I would go for the 10 different grants.
So, sorry, yes, I couldn't hear you clearly.
Is it giving? I would go for the 10 different grants
Why?
because I can multiply the opportunities.
What if one person really needs $1,000?
If they don't need it, is that
Think
what
of-
you're saying?
Think of the machshava, dibur, ma'aseh triad. What would be better for you, not for the person?
Oh, for me, obviously the other way. Yeah.
Why?
Because then I could invest in this case with the expectancy of get better interest in return of interest.
No, it's the same amount. In total, you're giving out now $1,000.
I would have to think harder. It'll take me a couple of minutes.
Anybody else?
I want to say,
Yeah.
I think the the charity, in my opinion, no, not my opinion, and I think I would like to give the the Torah scholar who hard study to the Torah
Never mind to who. The question isn't to who. The question is
to the
it
poor
one Torah
people.
scholar or 10 different Torah scholars?
I want to give the several kind of people, like the people who need money, they poor, they need, they ill, whatever. And I also give, I
Okay,
also
but let's say all the people that could be receiving are equal.
separate the
Is it
money.
one person who really, really needs $1,000 or 10 people who really, really need $100?
May I say something?
Yes.
So I would suggest like that the rabbis probably think that giving to one person $1,000 is better, because even if you only give it to one person, then in the long term, this will probably help this one person more to really establish something or give this person a chance than just like a smaller amount of tzedakah that is like nice, you give it to more people, but then these people, like everyone just gets $100, so it doesn't really change, like it doesn't have the potential to change their situation.
Okay. Okay, so the answer that Hachamim give is that it's better to give to 10 different. Why? Is because even though the amount is the same, the difference is the effect it has on you, right? You acquire a characteristic, a trait, by repeated action. Doesn't matter if you're giving $1, $100, or $1,000. It's the action of giving and sharing that changes your characteristic. And they want you to adopt a more generous we call it mindset, a more generous character. So if you repeat this action 10 times, it's better than just performing it once. So for you, for your personal growth, it's better to repeat the action more times, even if you're giving less each time. All right? So this is the beginning of Ma'aseh, right? I told you this is going to be the one example that I'm going to carry through this entire lecture. But there's many things, different characteristics that you can do, actions that you can do. It's also putting money in savings, inhibiting yourself, right, to not buy anything, based on your current desire and needs, right? So in order to do that, right, another action that you need to do is actually sit down and build a budget. Manage your expenses. Make sure that the money that you're spending is going to valuable things to you, meaning things that are valuable to you, whether it's needs that you need, things that match your values, right? And not being spent haphazardly on all sorts of things that you don't really need and aren't really gonna push you towards your vision and your freedom, your ultimately financial freedom. All right. So Shlomo HaMelech, he says, "Be'en hazon yipara'am." A nation without a vision they'll be restless. You can't manage them. They're destined to demise. V'shomer Torah ashrehu. It says, and happiness comes to those who follow the instruction, follow the Torah. All right? So what is a budget? Right? A budget isn't just a financial tool. It's a mirror. It shows you not where your money goes, but what your priorities are. All right? We often say certain things are important to us, our family, our health, our goals, but our spending doesn't always reflect that. So first stage, this is actually the first chapter of my book, is defining your vision and your values, right? At the end of the book, when we come to building a budget, we learn how to make a budget that reflects this vision and values that we have. All right? I'm going to share a story with you of a couple that I sat down with when I was coaching them. We went over all their expenses. We built up basically a picture of what they're spending their money on now. And they said that their top priority is their kids. I don't want to touch anything to do with my kids, right? Their education is important. Their extra school activities, it's important. You know, if they take lessons, I don't want to touch that. All right, we need to cut down somewhere. We're not touching the kids' expenses. I said, all right, I understand. Those are your values. We went over their budget, not the budget that we constructed, but basically the picture of their current budget, how they're currently spending their money. And I showed them. So look, you say your kids are most important, it's your highest priority, but you're spending a lot more money on cigarettes and alcohol than you are on your kids. And that was like a wake-up call for them. All right? And then once they realized that the spending isn't reflecting their actual values, and now that we're allocating different expenses to different things that are actually important to them, they started allocating more money to their kids and less to, they cut down their cigarettes budget by 50%, which made them smoke less. Eventually, they completely cut it out, and they actually quit smoking once they constructed a budget that reflects their actual values to allocate more money to their kids. So, you know, there's this common saying, you know, that people say, well, how much are you spending on the cigarettes? You say, I'm spending this much. How much does that come to a month? How much does it come to a year? Say over 10 years, right? Do you realize that over 10 years, your spending on cigarettes could have bought you a BMW? And the guy responds to him, says, do you smoke? And he says, no. So, well, where's your BMW? So, because when it's abstract, your savings are abstract because it's not tangible, it's not tied to anything specific, it's meaningless. You're not going to save that money. But if you have an actual vision and an actual goal, right? You're saving money for your kid's bar mitzvah. You're saving money for a wedding. You're saving money for this thing, this course that's really important to you and it's expensive. And you allocate money as savings to that, right? Then overspending you now know exactly what it's costing you if you overspend on something else. All right? It means you won't reach your goal of your kid's bar mitzvah or wedding or your course or whatever it is that you set aside with the money that you need for it. All right? So their budget didn't reflect their values. It reflected their habits. When you have a budget, you're deciding where your money is going. You're in control, right? When you don't, it's haphazard. And you just spend haphazardly, and those are your habits. It's not who you want to be, it's who you are as a member of the animal kingdom. Who you are as a person, those are your values. All right, so when spending is haphazard, you're not living according to your values. When your goal is value-based and emotionally real, right? Because they want to spend on their kids, even an addiction like smoking can be conquered once it's put into that framework. All right? So this is my main message about budgeting and a different way to look at it. All right? And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this lecture is we're going to redefine wealth. Ezehu ashir hasameach b'chelko. All right, the Chachamim say in Pirkei Avot, who is wealthy? Hasameach b'chelko. Seemingly can seem like istapek b'mu'at, settling for less, right? Hasameach b'chelko, be happy with what you got. I don't think that's the meaning of the Chachamim. Hasameach b'chelko, one who rejoices in his portion. Everybody receives a portion. Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelek, right? Everyone has a chelko. What is your portion? What do you have? What is your talent? What is your unique quality that God gave you, right? That you can rejoice in. What's rejoice in? It means to cultivate it, to develop it, to invest in it. Invest in whatever virtue you have in order to add value. And the important part is, doesn't matter how big this halak is. We see here in this picture, there's two gardens. One is big, who knows how long, maybe it's 100 meters big, we can't see the end of it, but it's neglected, it's overrun by weeds, right? It doesn't bring any value to anybody. And the other one is a small portion, but it's cultivated, right? The person on the right, he comes out in the morning, right, with his coffee, and he's sitting down, and he sees his garden, and it makes him happy. It elevates him. It gives him energy for the day. Doesn't matter what your portion is. If you have a talent, you're creative, you're good with music, you're good with art, you have some sort of wisdom that you can teach others, right? Whatever it is, develop it, scale it, right? Add value, right? Bring in the Shefa, add value, add more value to the people around you, that everyone benefit from it. And this is how you can grow your portion, grow your wealth. Any questions?
Amazing. I'm not sure if it's a question or actually a reflection. When it comes to the tzedakah, according to the Chachamim, would it be considered also when we give to our family members in need, and it would have the same effect?
Yes, absolutely.
So
Not only that,
that,
say עניי עירך קודמים, or עניי ביתך קודמים. Your priority to your family members, and then to your community, your members of your community, and then to others. You know, there's people that are obsessed with this tikkun olam, right? they can completely neglect everyone in the community, but they're going to go now to sub-Saharan Africa in order to feed the poor over there. Says, no, we have priorities. First, your family members, then your extended family, the people in your community, right? Don't neglect your immediate, your surroundings. Take care of yourself, take care of the people around you and your community. And as you grow, right, as you grow your wealth, you can affect more and more circles around that. Anything else? Anyone else?
One more question, Val, more.
Yes.
When I've received tzedakah before, okay, myself, and with that tzedakah, it is okay to give tzedakah from that tzedakah, no maaser tzedakah, to somebody like studying the Torah or somebody out in the street that you know that they also need some of it.
Yeah, that's fine. But
Okay.
if you receive tzedakah because you need it, use it on what you need. But you still have your own obligation to give tzedakah.
Yes, that's what I thought.
So you can use part of that for the tzedakah too. Yeah, sure, no problem. All right, so I'm going to make a digital version of this book available to anyone who wants to read the book. I'll send it to Bracha and read the book, right? I hope you enjoy it. If you have any comments, please reach out to me. Remember, develop your portion, scale it. Don't be afraid to grow wealthy. Learn to manage your finances so that you can properly cultivate it and grow it. And Beruchim to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
you.
מצוין.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you very
יוצא
much.
דופן.
Sammy,
Hey,
is it
Yes.
possible to get a hard
Suppose
copy of your book?